You will have studied research into 3 examples of exceptional experience: psychic healing, out-of-body experience and near-death experience, and psychic mediumship. The assumption from those that claim to have them is that these experiences have some supernatural basis, which is what makes them exceptional. You have come across a lot of research in this field of anomalistic psychology already, so it's important to consider the research into exceptional experience within this sphere of knowledge. We will return later to the issues raised here to weigh up the research in this area. On the positive side, we've already seen that much of psychology aims to carry out research in a scientific manner, which means that attempts are made to be objective, replicable, and falsifiable. In addition, before research is published, there are rigorous procedures in place to ensure research that is in the public domain is valid and genuine, such as the peer review process. However, we have also seen that this is not always the case when it comes to research into anomalistic experience. Research in this area is often pseudo-scientific, having the appearance of objectivity, but under closer scrutiny missing the controls needed to draw firm and meaningful conclusions. In addition, this research is tainted by suspicion of fraud, as there are numerous examples of investigators tampering with apparatus or results, and the success of the validation processes in place are limited by our reluctance to see fraud, even when it is right under our noses. The negatives seem to cancel out the positives in this area of research, so we need to be extra cautious drawing conclusions. Psychic healing, also known as faith healing and mental healing, involves making someone better using the mental power of the healer. Psychic healers often speak of an energy surrounding a patient which is manipulated in some way to produce a positive impact on the well-being of the patient. Healers claim to have supernatural healing abilities which cannot be explained by conventional science. In fact, a healer may do so without even touching the patient. One technique, for example, is referred to as therapeutic touch healing, where the healer places their hands 4 to 6 inches above the patient. Healing is achieved through touching and changing energy surrounding the patient. So is it a genuine supernatural ability, or a cunning way for healers to make money by feeding people false hope? In order to reliably conclude that psychic healing has a measurable impact, we need to see a number of key features in any study designed to test this. Dolores Krieger, a nurse and teacher at New York University, carried out an investigation into the impact of psychic healing. In the study, she measured the impact of healing on the red blood cell count of a group of participants. This stemmed from the idea that healing might improve a patient's vitality, in other words, their ability to fight infection. Cell count was measured using blood samples before and after healing. 49 patients were treated with psychic healing at the hands of a man called Oscar Estebany, and 29 participants acted as controls and received no treatment. Good news for Oscar, the treatment group had higher levels of hemoglobin in the blood cells after treatment and a year later. He achieved this by simply placing one or both hands on the person or near their body and visualizing positive energy surging into the patient's body. Other literature also seems to show a positive, measurable impact of psychic healing. In another study, Keller and colleagues selected 60 participants who had tension headache pain and were aged between 18 and 59. They were asked not to take their headache medication prior to the study, and their headaches had to have no known medical cause. The severity of the pain was measured before and after using the McGill-Melzack pain questionnaire. Participants were allocated to either an experimental group who underwent therapeutic touch healing or a control group. A single blind procedure was used as participants did not know which condition they were in. In both conditions, the participants sat quietly for 5 minutes with a healer standing nearby with their hands hovering close to the participant's body. In the experimental group, the healer worked with the energy surrounding the participant's body for the 5 minutes. In the control group, however, the healer did not do this. Instead, they concentrated on subtracting 7s from 100 in their head, but otherwise behaved in the same way towards the participant. This was to ensure that they were not healing. This study had staggeringly positive results, achieving a very high level of significance. 90% of the treatment group had lower pain both 5 minutes after the healing and 4 hours later, as shown by the scores on the MMPQ. Livers et al. Were approached by a TV company to test the powers of a well-known Australian psychic. 20 volunteers took part, but only half were actually in the treatment group, although they thought they were all being healed. The healer claimed he could heal people by focusing on a photo of the participants from backstage in a separate room. He focused on the photos of those in the treatment group, but did not see photos of those in the control group. The MMPQ was used to assess their level of pain before and after. The results were disappointing for the psychic healer, as there was no significant reduction in pain for the treatment group or the control group. However, interestingly, the researchers did find a correlation between belief and final pain score. In other words, those who believed it would work most were in less pain afterwards. This suggests that the power of the healing may lie in a psychological expectation of improvement by the patient and not in the abilities of the healer. The healer, however, claimed he was better if he healed over short distances than long distances. The use of the single blind technique, therefore, seemed to hamper his abilities. On the whole, the evidence suggests that healing over a short distance has a positive, measurable impact. However, we need to return to some of the issues raised earlier in order to evaluate this evidence. Krieger's study, which showed that healing increased vitality, has some plus points. Firstly, there was a control group to ensure the improvements were due to the healing and not simply occurring spontaneously. And secondly, vitality was assessed using blood samples, which are not subject to demand characteristics like self-report measures of improvement can be. Benor reviewed a large amount of studies, which might lead us to assume that with a wide range of patient samples and healers, that the research has good external validity and therefore good generalizability. In addition, the repeated replication of positive results suggests reliability. In the third positive study we considered earlier, Keller, like Krieger, included a control group, but also used a single blind procedure. This helps to rule out the idea that placebo effects and expectations of recovery were responsible for the reduction in pain, as presumably all the patients thought that they were being healed. These studies seem to have a number of features consistent with a scientific approach, but what about random allocation to groups? In Krieger's study, participants seemed to know which group they were in, and in fact it appears that the 49 patients seeing the healer were doing so of their own choosing, but that Krieger recruited the controls. This means that belief and expectation are potentially confounding variables here. Of course, with Benner's review, we have no idea how controlled each of the 197 studies were. This may be a case of quantity, not quality. Although Keller's study used the single blind procedure, it is possible that the healer behaved differently in subtle ways when healing as opposed to counting, which the participants may have subconsciously picked up on. Furthermore, although the participants weren't, the investigators were aware of the conditions, and therefore they may have behaved differently to the participants when preparing or debriefing them prior to completing the MMPQ. Most of the studies seem to focus on pain reduction for headaches. It's not clear whether healing has a positive impact on other ailments, although Benner's review included healing in a range of contexts and on a range of recipients.